I'm so glad you found your way here. Right now, your brain is running a loop. It cannot stop. Replaying a choice, a moment, a road not taken. Tonight, you'll discover the neuroscience behind why that loop runs and understand what your mind actually needs to finally let it go. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Now, settle in, wherever you are resting tonight. Your nervous system is already searching for permission to release what it has been carrying. Allow yourself this moment of quiet. We'll journey through 100 psychology facts about the neuroscience of letting go, from the ancient brain loop that replays regret, to the chemistry of self-forgiveness, to the moment your mind finally sets the weight down. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where memories rest safely, in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. Your brain does not store regret the way it stores a simple memory. Neuroscientists have identified that regret activates a specific cluster of regions: the orbitofrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the medial prefrontal cortex, all working together in a loop of comparison. Your brain takes the choice you made, holds it next to the choice you did not make, and calculates the difference. This comparison is not punishment. It is your brain trying to learn. It is asking, what could be done differently? The trouble is, when that question has no new answer to find, the loop keeps running. Understanding this is the first step toward quiet. The orbitofrontal cortex, a region just behind your forehead, is sometimes called the brain's regret center. Research published in journals, including Nature Neuroscience, has shown that neurons in this area fire specifically in response to counterfactual thinking. That is, imagining what might have been. This region evolved to help animals learn from mistakes. When a creature passed up food in one location and later found it scarce elsewhere, these neurons fired to encode the lesson. In humans, that same ancient circuitry gets applied to relationships, career choices, and words spoken in anger. You are not weak for feeling regret. You are inscient, and you are learning. Regret is not the same as guilt, though they often travel together. Guilt focuses on harm done to others. It says, I hurt someone. Regret focuses on outcomes for yourself. It says, that did not go the way I hoped. Neuroscientists and psychologists have studied this distinction carefully, and it matters because the pathways to release are different. Guilt responds to repair and apology. Regret responds to reappraisal, to gently telling the story of that moment from a new perspective. Your brain can learn to do this. It is doing it even now. As you breathe, as your body softens into wherever you are resting tonight. There are two categories of regret that researchers have consistently identified across cultures: regrets of action and regrets of inaction. Interestingly, in the short term, people tend to feel more pain over things they did that went wrong, but over longer stretches of time, years, decades, regrets of inaction become far more persistent. The paths not taken, the conversations never had, the chances left on the table. This asymmetry suggests that your brain has a particular sensitivity to incompleteness. It longs quietly and persistently, for what was never finished. A landmark set of studies by psychologist Neil Rose found that the most common life regrets in American adults cluster into 6 domains: education, career, romance, parenting, self-improvement, and leisure. Education consistently tops the list, likely because it is seen as foundational to everything that follows. What is notable is not the specifics, it is the pattern. These are all areas where people felt they had agency, where they sensed they could have done something differently. Regret, it turns out, is deeply tied to our sense of personal control, and that sense of control, even when painful, is also what makes healing possible. Your brain processes regret differently depending on how much time has passed since the event. In the immediate aftermath of a regret-inducing experience, the emotional intensity is high, and the orbitofrontal cortex and amygdala are both highly active, but over time, if conditions are right, a process called memory reconsolidation allows the emotional charge attached to a memory to be updated. Every time you remember something, you are not replaying a recording, you are reconstructing it. And each reconstruction is an opportunity, however subtle, for the story to shift. Memory reconsolidation was once considered a fringe idea, but it is now supported by extensive research across multiple species, including humans. When a memory is retrieved, it enters what scientists call a labile state, a temporary window of instability during which the memory is malleable. During this window, the emotional weight attached to the memory can be increased, decreased, or reorganized. This is not fantasy, it is biochemistry. The protein synthesis required to restore the memory after retrieval is the same process that makes the emotional rewrite possible. Your past is, in the most literal neurological sense, not entirely fixed. Sleep plays a remarkable role in the emotional processing of regret. And REM sleep, the dreaming phase, is at the heart of this. Researchers, including Matthew Walker at the University of California, Berkeley, have described REM sleep as a kind of overnight emotional therapy. What makes REM sleep distinctive is its neurochemical environment. During this phase, norepinephrine, the brain's primary stress chemical, falls to its lowest levels of the day. This allows the brain to revisit emotionally charged memories without the full physiological stress response. The emotional sting softens, while the factual content of the memory is preserved. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, this process begins. The anterior cingulate cortex, a curved ribbon of neural tissue near the center of your brain, is involved in detecting conflict, including the conflict between what you chose and what you wish you had chosen. When this region is highly active, people report feelings of mental friction, difficulty moving forward, and a persistent sense that something is unresolved. Interestingly, mindfulness practices and certain forms of therapy have been shown to reduce hyperactivity in the anterior cingulate cortex over time. The brain can learn to register that conflict with less alarm. The loop can slow down. Self-compassion is not a soft or vague concept in neuroscience. Research by Kristin Neff and colleagues has demonstrated that self-compassion, treating oneself with the same warmth one would offer a good friend, activates different neural circuits than self-criticism. Self-criticism tends to activate the threat system, triggering cortisol release and heightened amygdala activity. Self-compassion activates the care system, associated with oxytocin and reduced stress response. When you soften toward yourself over a past regret, you are not avoiding accountability. You are creating the neurological conditions in which genuine learning and genuine letting go becomes possible. The concept of psychological closure is real but often misunderstood. People commonly believe closure requires an explanation from another person, a final conversation, or a resolved outcome. But psychological research suggests that closure is primarily an internal process, a shift in the way the mind frames an open chapter. Studies on the Zeigarnik effect, which describes how unfinished tasks remain active in working memory, indicate that closure occurs when the mind accepts that a situation is complete. Regardless of whether it ended cleanly, your brain can declare a chapter closed. It has that authority. You can offer it that permission tonight. Counterfactual thinking, the if-only and what-if loops, is not always harmful. Research shows that upward counterfactuals, those in which you imagine a better outcome, we can motivate behavior change when they are directed toward the future. The trouble comes when upward counterfactuals are applied repeatedly to unchangeable past events. When your brain runs the same if only loop about something that cannot be altered, it consumes resources without producing learning. Recognizing when a loop has become unproductive is itself a form of metacognitive wisdom. And metacognition, thinking about thinking, can be developed, practiced, and deepened. The medial prefrontal cortex, a region active during self-referential thought, plays a key role in how you construct your personal narrative, the story of who you are and how you came to be here. Regret often lodges itself in this narrative as evidence of a flaw. I made the wrong choice because of something fundamentally wrong with me. But the medial prefrontal cortex is also the region most responsive to narrative reframing. When the story changes, when a past decision becomes understandable, given what you knew then, the neural signature of regret measurably softens. Stories are not just words. They are the architecture of how your brain holds the past. There is a phenomenon researchers call the impact bias. We systematically overestimate how long and how intensely emotional events will affect us. This applies to both positive events and negative ones. Studies by Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson have shown that people predict they will feel much worse, for much longer, about regrettable events than they actually end up feeling. The brain has powerful psychological immune system processes, rationalization, positive reframing, social comparison, that work quietly and largely outside awareness to soften difficult experiences. You have already survived things you thought would break you. Your brain knew what to do. Some research has suggested that the right hemisphere of the brain tends to be more involved in processing negative emotions, while the left is more associated with approach, motivation, and positive affect. This framework developed by Richard Davidson and others, has been influential, though researchers note that emotional processing involves complex networks across both hemispheres rather than a strict division. What the evidence does suggest more consistently is that slow, deliberate breathing can shift autonomic nervous system balance toward the parasympathetic, the calming branch. When you breathe slowly right now, you are tilting your body's chemistry toward a place where the weight of regret can become lighter. Forgiveness, including self-forgiveness, has been studied with neuroimaging tools, and the results are striking. Forgiving someone activates areas of the brain associated with empathy and perspective-taking, reducing activity in regions associated with rumination and threat response. Self-forgiveness follows similar pathways. Research published in journals of clinical psychology suggests that self-forgiveness is not a single moment but a process, one that involves acknowledging what happened, accepting responsibility without excessive self-punishment, and consciously extending compassion toward one's past self. That past self was doing what they knew how to do at the time. The hippocampus, the brain's memory librarian, does not store memories as complete, frozen scenes. It stores fragments, emotional tones, sensory impressions, narrative summaries that are assembled each time a memory is recalled. This assembly process is influenced by your current emotional state, your expectations, and the context in which you are remembering. What this means, in practice, is that the story of your regret is not a document. It is a draft. Each time you approach it with a little more kindness, a little more distance, the draft shifts quietly in your favor. Rumination, the repetitive, passive focus on distress, is one of the primary mechanisms through which regret becomes chronic. Clinical psychologists distinguish rumination from reflection. Reflection is purposeful thinking aimed at understanding and moving forward, while rumination cycles without direction or resolution. Research by Susan Nolan Hoeksema showed that rumination significantly increases the duration and severity of depressive episodes. The good news embedded in this research is also clear. Techniques that interrupt rumination, including mindfulness, behavioral activation, and even distraction, genuinely work. The loop is not permanent. It can be slowed, redirected, dissolved. Expressive writing about difficult experiences has been studied extensively by psychologist James Pennebaker. His research, spanning decades, shows that writing about emotionally significant events, including regrets, for as little as 15 to 20 minutes on 3 or 4 consecutive days, produces measurable improvements in psychological and physical health. The hypothesis is that writing imposes narrative structure on chaotic emotional material, allowing the brain to file the experience more completely and reduce its ongoing intrusion into working memory. You do not have to write tonight, but the option is there, waiting, whenever you are ready. The default mode network, a set of brain regions that activates during rest and self-referential thought, is particularly active during regret processing. This network includes the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus. Research has shown that individuals who tend toward higher trait rumination show stronger and more persistent default mode network activity. Interestingly, sleep, and particularly NREM, deep sleep, is associated with reduced default mode network activity as you move towards sleep tonight. This network quiets. The voices that replay the past grow softer in the hours ahead. Acceptance. In the psychological sense used in acceptance and commitment therapy, does not mean approving of what happened. It means stopping the war against what cannot be changed. Research on psychological flexibility, the ability to hold difficult thoughts and feelings without allowing them to dominate behavior, shows that acceptance reduces the functional interference of regret in daily life. When the brain stops spending energy fighting the existence of a memory, it becomes available for other things, for connection, for creativity, for rest. You can hold a regret and still move forward. You can carry it lightly. The insula, a region tucked deep within the lateral sulcus of the brain, is involved in interoception, the perception of the body's internal states. Research has found that insular activity is elevated during experiences of regret and social pain. This is why regret can feel physical. The tight chest, the heaviness in the stomach, the fatigue that seems to have no clear source. The body registers what the mind holds. And the reverse is also true. When the body softens, through slow breath, through warmth, through rest, the insula's alarm signals quiet, and the emotional experience becomes easier to bear. There is a concept in cognitive psychology called temporal self-appraisal theory, developed by Ann Wilson and Michael Ross. It describes how people tend to view their past selves more negatively over time, as less intelligent, less capable, less mature, which paradoxically increases self-esteem by creating a flattering sense of growth. The complication is that this same distancing from the past self can make self-compassion more difficult. If you dismiss your past self too harshly, "He didn't know. She was foolish," you may deny that person the same kindness you would offer a struggling friend. That past self deserves gentleness. They were doing their best with what they had. Gratitude and regret are processed in overlapping but distinct neural regions. Both involve counterfactual thinking, comparing what is to what might have been. But gratitude tends to activate the ventromedial prefrontal cortex in a way associated with positive affect and social bonding, while unprocessed regret activates this region in a way associated with loss and self-focus. Research suggests that deliberately shifting toward gratitude, not as a way to deny the regret, but to broaden the frame, can gradually alter the ratio of activation between these competing signals. There is loss in your past. There is also something you have been given. The most current neuroscience suggests that letting go of regret is not a single act of willpower. It is a process, neurological, emotional, and narrative, that unfolds over time, often during sleep, often through small daily practices, often in quiet moments just like this one. The brain that carries your regrets is the same brain that rewires itself every night while you sleep. Every slow breath you take right now is not passive. It is part of the biology of release, somewhere beneath awareness. The work is already happening. Your brain has been letting go, quietly, all along. You've stayed. You've listened. That stillness you're finding right now, that's yours to keep. A quiet subscribe or like helps this channel reach the people who need it most. One sleepy soul at a time. Let your hands fall open. Feel the surface beneath you. Your body knows how to be heavy. Let it. Notice the weight of your arms, the weight of your legs, somewhere in your chest. Something old is beginning to soften. You don't have to name it. You don't have to do anything with it. Just breathe and let the night hold you. The amygdala, often described as the brain's alarm system, assigns emotional weight to memories. Regret-laden memories typically carry a strong amygdala signature, a marker that tells the brain, this one is important. Keep revisiting it. But research in effective neuroscience shows that the amygdala's response to a memory diminishes with repeated, calm exposure in low arousal states. This is the principle behind exposure-based therapies, and also one of the reasons why thinking about difficult things in a state of relaxation, like the one you are settling into now, can gently reduce the emotional charge they carry over time. One of the most important factors in whether regret becomes chronic or is processed and released is what psychologists call explanatory style. The habitual way a person explains negative events to themselves. People with an internal, stable, global explanatory style tend to carry regret longer and more painfully. People who can explain events as external, unstably, or specific tend to process and release regret more effectively. Explanatory style can be changed. It is not fixed. It is a habit of narration, and habits respond to practice. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, is responsible for regulating the amygdala's emotional responses. When the prefrontal cortex is functioning well, it can modulate the alarm signals coming from deeper brain regions, allowing for reflection rather than just reaction. Research shows that this regulatory capacity is weakened by sleep deprivation, chronic stress, and sustained emotional overload. It is strengthened by adequate sleep, regular physical movement, and practices that cultivate present moment awareness. Tonight, as you rest, your prefrontal cortex restores itself. The regulator gets stronger while you sleep. In a striking set of studies, neuroscientists found that the experience of regret requires a functioning orbitofrontal cortex. Patients with damage to this region do not experience regret in the normal sense. They do not engage in counterfactual thinking about their choices. This finding suggests something important. The capacity for regret is inseparable from the capacity for learning and social reasoning. You feel regret because you are capable of imagining alternatives. That same imagination is what allows you to envision a different future, a different way of holding your past, a different story. Research on narrative identity, the idea that we organize our sense of self as an ongoing story, suggests that people who integrate difficult experiences into a coherent life narrative tend to show higher levels of psychological well-being. Northwestern University psychologist Dan McAdams has spent decades studying how people construct their life stories, and his work shows that the most psychologically resilient individuals are not those who had easy lives, but those who became skilled at making meaning from hard chapters. Regret does not have to be the ending of a story. It can become a turning point, a moment when something shifted. The brain's capacity to change in response to experience, what scientists call neuroplasticity, continues throughout adult life. Though the nature and pace of that change differs from childhood, research on mindfulness-based cognitive therapy has shown meaningful changes in self-reported well-being, emotion, regulation, and attention within weeks to months of practice. Some neuroimaging studies have detected corresponding changes in patterns of brain activity, though researchers note that individual results vary and that the field continues to refine its understanding of exactly what changes and how. What is consistent across the evidence is this: gentle, repeated attention toward calm does something real. The brain responds to where you bring it. The concept of post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon in which people report positive psychological changes following difficult experiences, has been documented across cultures and across a wide range of adversity types. Research by Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun found that people who experienced significant hardship often reported improved relationships, a greater sense of personal strength, new possibilities, spiritual deepening, and a greater appreciation for life. Regret, at its most processed, can become exactly this: not something to be rid of, but something that deepened you, something that taught you what mattered. Beyond its role in emotional tone, which we touched on earlier, REM sleep performs a more specific function. It appears to extract the general meaning of emotional experiences while fading the precise emotional pain. Researchers sometimes call this the sleep to forget, sleep to remember process. The factual content of a difficult memory is preserved. You still remember what happened, but the raw emotional charge attached to it gradually diminishes across nights of adequate sleep. This is why something that felt unbearable a month ago can feel more manageable today. Even without consciously working through it, your sleeping mind has been processing it quietly all along. Social connection has a measurable impact on the brain's processing of regret and difficult emotions. Research using functional MRI imaging has shown that viewing images of loved ones reduces the neural signature of pain, including emotional pain. Even the felt sense of being accepted and understood by others changes the biochemistry of how the brain handles distress. If you have shared a regret with someone who responded with compassion rather than judgment, you have experienced this directly. The story became more bearable when it was witnessed. You were less alone inside it. Time perspective. The habitual tendency to focus on the past, present, or future influences how regret is experienced and processed. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo identified several time perspectives and found that individuals with a positive past orientation, those who tend to view their history with warmth and acceptance, report significantly lower levels of depression and regret than those with a negative past orientation. Crucially, time perspective is not fixed. Practices that cultivate positive memories, gratitude, and reconnection with meaningful past experiences can shift one's habitual orientation over months and years. The role of the body in emotional processing is often underestimated. The vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve, running from the brainstem through the heart, lungs, and abdomen, is a primary pathway through which the body signals its state to the brain. Slow, deep exhalations activate the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system via the vagus nerve, shifting the body out of the stress response and into a state of calm. When you breathe slowly tonight, you are not performing a relaxation technique. You are directly altering your neurobiological state. You are signaling safety to your nervous system. Research on the broaden and build theory of positive emotions, developed by Barbara Fredrickson, suggests that positive emotional states do not merely feel good. They broaden the scope of attention and build cognitive and social resources over time. In contrast, negative emotional states, including prolonged regret, narrow attention toward the problem. This creates a kind of tunnel vision that makes it harder to see options, possibilities, and alternative narratives. Introducing moments of warmth, appreciation, or gentle humor, even briefly, can literally widen the lens through which the mind views its experience. The phenomenon known as the peak end rule, studied by Daniel Kahneman, shows that people's remembered experience of an event is disproportionately shaped by two moments: the most emotionally intense point and the final moment. This means that painful experiences with poor endings are remembered more harshly than their full texture deserves. It also means that endings matter, how you choose to end tonight. In warmth, in quiet, in the gentle weight of rest, shapes how your brain will remember this day. You can give yourself a good ending. Writing about future intentions following a regret has been shown to be more psychologically effective than writing about the regret itself. Research suggests that when people articulate specific ways they would behave differently in the future, they shift their neural focus from the amygdala-heavy processing of the past to the more prefrontal, forward-oriented processing of planning and agency. The regret becomes instructive rather than punishing. It hands something over. The lesson is extracted, and the loop can finally close. There is a phenomenon researchers call regret regulation. The proactive and reactive strategies people use to minimize the experience of regret. Proactive strategies include gathering information before decisions, setting clear goals, and allowing sufficient time for choices. Reactive strategies include reframing, self-distancing, and finding compensatory meaning. Studies show that people who have a flexible repertoire of both types of strategies tend to experience less chronic regret across their lives. The mind that knows how to care for itself tends to carry its history more lightly. You're still here, still breathing, still with us. Notice how quiet it has become inside you. Your body has been softening all along. Let's keep going. Slowly, into the night. The neuroscience of self-forgiveness overlaps significantly with the neuroscience of forgiveness toward others. Both processes involve a shift from self-focused, threat-oriented processing to other-oriented, empathy-based processing. neuroimaging studies show increased activation in the temporoparietal junction, a region associated with perspective taking. During forgiveness states, when you consider your past self from a slight distance, as if looking at a younger sibling who made a mistake, the same neural architecture that allows empathy for others becomes available for compassion toward yourself. Distance is not coldness. Sometimes it is the kindest view. The concept of psychological distance, viewing an experience as if from a distance in time, space, or perspective, has been shown to reduce emotional reactivity to difficult memories. Psychologist Ethan Kross has studied self-distancing extensively, finding that referring to oneself in the third person during reflection on upsetting events reduces distress and increases access to wisdom. Instead of thinking, "Why did I do that?" the brain can consider, "Why did she do that? And what was she trying to protect?" A small shift in language creates measurable changes in neural processing. The medial temporal lobe, which includes the hippocampus, is not just a storehouse for memory. It is also a simulation engine. Research shows that the same neural regions involved in retrieving past memories are active when imagining future scenarios. This means that the brain's capacity to ruminate about the past and its capacity to envision hopeful futures are deeply interconnected, training the mind to project forward, to imagine, even briefly, a version of yourself who has made peace with this, uses the same neural machinery as the loop of regret. You can redirect the simulator. Slow, rhythmic breathing has been shown to synchronize neural oscillations in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, regions central to memory consolidation and emotional regulation. Research from Northwestern University demonstrated that breathing rhythm directly influences electrical activity in the brain, particularly in regions related to memory and fear. Inhaling slowly appears to enhance coupling between these regions in ways that support both memory encoding and emotional processing. The breath is not just oxygen. It is timing information for the brain's most important circuits. The weight of regret tends to be heavier in midlife. According to research on the psychology of aging, as people move through their 40s and 50s, they become increasingly aware of the gap between the lives they imagined and the lives they are living. However, this same period is also associated with what psychologists call the maturity principle, a developmental shift toward greater emotional stability, self-acceptance, and integration. The weight arrives alongside the wisdom to bear it. The accumulation of years brings not only more regret, but more capacity to hold it gently. Research on the experience of awe, the emotion triggered by encountering something vast and not fully comprehensible, shows that it consistently reduces the perceived importance of personal concerns and individual identity. Awe activates a sense of a smaller, less dominant self within a larger context. What researchers call a small self-experience. People who regularly experience awe report lower levels of stress and rumination. You do not need a mountain or an ocean to find this. The night sky will do, the quiet hum of something much larger than your regrets, moving all around you, right now. Human beings are distinctly social creatures. and the neural basis of social pain overlaps substantially with the neural basis of physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex and insula, active during physical pain, are also active during experiences of social rejection, loss, and broken connection. Regrets involving damaged or lost relationships carry this dual weight. They are both memories and social wounds. Understanding this explains the physicality of grief over lost relationships. It also points toward the healing connection. Even remembered warmth from the past activates the same neural soothing pathways as physical comfort. Cognitive reappraisal, the deliberate effort to reinterpret the meaning of an experience, is one of the most studied and consistently effective emotional regulation strategies in psychology. Research by James Gross and colleagues at Stanford University has shown that reappraisal reduces activity in the amygdala and subjective reports of distress, while engaging the prefrontal cortex. Importantly, reappraisal does not require pretending something was not painful. It involves asking, what else might this mean? What did this teach me? What did it make possible that would not otherwise have existed? The question itself is a reappraisal. There is evidence that simply having one's experience acknowledged, witnessed, without being fixed or judged, can reduce the emotional burden of difficult feelings. Research in psychotherapy and interpersonal psychology suggests that being understood by another person, or holding one's own experience with genuine curiosity rather than avoidance, promotes what some researchers describe as emotional integration, the gradual linking of feeling and meaning. Your experience of regret, acknowledged rather than suppressed, becomes something the brain can begin to organize. What is held with awareness tends to settle. What is hidden tends to echo. Tonight, you have reached the halfway point of 100 facts about how your brain finally, gently, lets go. Somewhere in the last 50 minutes, your breathing has slowed. Your muscles have eased. The thoughts that seemed urgent when you lay down have grown softer at their edges. This is not coincidence. This is what happens when the nervous system receives consistent signals of safety. And the science, every quiet fact tonight, is part of that signal. Your brain is listening. It is beginning to believe that it is safe to release what it has been holding, that the loop can close, that tonight it is allowed to rest. Imagine yourself from a little distance above, not judging, just witnessing. There you are, breathing in the quiet. There is your body, resting against the surface beneath you. There is a person who has carried something for a long time, longer than they perhaps realize. And now, in this moment, in this room, they are choosing to set it down. Not forever. Perhaps. Not all at once. But tonight, just a little. You can see it happening. You can feel it happening. The weight shifts. The breath deepens. Something that was tight begins to release. You are allowed to witness yourself with kindness. You are allowed to see everything you have carried and say, that was real, and I am still here. The brain's reward system, centered on the nucleus accumbens and dopaminergic pathways, is involved not only in pleasure, but in anticipation and learning. Research shows that regret activates these pathways in a specific way, by signaling that the reward that could have been obtained was not. This signal is adaptive in contexts where behavior can be changed, but when directed at unchangeable past events, it becomes a source of chronic, low-level distress. Understanding this mechanism creates distance from it. The alarm was built for a world where you could still act. Tonight, you can tell it, the action has already happened. It is done. The phenomenon of mental simulation, vividly imagining an alternative past, can be used therapeutically when approached with care. Research in positive psychology suggests that structured reflection on past choices, emphasizing what was gained rather than only what was lost, can shift the affective tone of regret. Not every road not taken was paved with gold. The life you actually lived contains things that the other path might never have offered. You arrived here, to this moment, carrying exactly what this journey gave you. That is not nothing. The body often responds to prolonged emotional stress in physical ways. Through patterns of muscular tension, changes in posture, and shifts in autonomic nervous system tone, clinicians working in somatic psychology, drawing on observations from Bessel van der Kolk and others, have noted that unprocessed emotional experiences can show up in the body as chronic tightness, guardedness, or reactivity that persists even when the original event is no longer consciously in mind. The mechanisms are not yet fully understood at a neurological level, but the observation is consistent, tending to the body through breath, warmth, and rest, supports emotional processing in ways that purely cognitive approaches sometimes cannot reach alone. Time heals, but not automatically. Research on the natural course of regret suggests that its intensity does tend to decrease over time. But this reduction is more pronounced in people who engage in active coping, reappraisal, social connection, meaning-making, passive avoidance, suppressing the thought, distracting from it, never looking directly at it, tends to slow the natural healing process. Allowing yourself to be here tonight, letting the science touch the edges of the feeling, is a form of active coping. It is not indulgence, it is care. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio proposed the somatic marker hypothesis, the idea that emotions function as rapid, body-based guidance, signals that inform decision-making. According to this framework, regret functions as a somatic marker, signaling that a previous decision led to a negative outcome. This signal is meant to guide future choices, not to endlessly replay the past. When you recognize that the regret has delivered its message, that the lesson has been received, you can gently tell the somatic marker, "I heard you. I understand. You can rest now." Research on self-defining memories, those personally significant memories that most shape a person's identity, shows that they are not always positive. In fact, they often involve difficulty, failure, and loss. What distinguishes self-defining memories that contribute to psychological well-being from those that do not is not their content, but their integration. Well-being is associated with memories that have been processed into a coherent story, one with an arc, a meaning, a sense that something was learned or that growth occurred. The memory remains, but it becomes a chapter, not a sentence. Certain wavelengths of light, specifically warm, low blue light, signal to the brain through the suprachiasmatic nucleus that night is approaching, and that the release of melatonin should begin. The same signal that initiates sleep also initiates a broader biological shift toward restoration. Temperature drops slightly. Heart rate slows. Digestion quiet. This is your body's ancient choreography of letting go. A nightly practice of release that has been running since before you had language to name your regrets. Every night, your body already knows how to do this. It has been practicing for your whole life. The construct of equanimity, stable, undisturbed quality of mind, even in the presence of difficulty, is associated in neuroimaging research with increased activity in the left prefrontal cortex and reduced amygdala reactivity. Equanimity is not the absence of feeling. It is the capacity to feel without being swept away. Research on experienced meditators suggests this capacity can be cultivated over time, and that even relatively brief training in mindfulness practices begins to shift these neural signatures. You do not have to reach equanimity tonight, but you are already closer to it than you were an hour ago. The act of writing a letter to your past self, a practice sometimes used in therapy and in psychological research, has been shown to reduce self-criticism and increase self-compassion. Studies by Leah Shapira and Mario Mongrain found that participants who wrote compassionate letters to themselves experienced reductions in depressive symptoms and increases in happiness over a month-long period. The past self that made the choices you regret was a real person with limited information and real fear. They deserve what you would give a struggling friend. Not judgment, but understanding. The phenomenon of spontaneous mind wandering, the default mode network's tendency to drift into past and future, is associated with poorer sleep quality when the content of that wandering is negatively valenced. Research shows that worry and rumination in the pre-sleep period increase sleep onset latency and reduce slow-wave sleep. Conversely, directing attention toward positive or neutral content before sleep, including absorption in calming educational content, has been associated with faster sleep onset and improved sleep quality. You chose well. Coming here tonight. Forgiveness, including self-forgiveness, has measurable physiological effects. Research has shown that unforgiveness, holding resentment, blame, or harsh self-judgment is associated with elevated cortisol, increased cardiovascular activity, and reduced immune function. Forgiveness, studied with physiological measures, is associated with reduced cortisol, decreased heart rate, and lower rates of anxiety. The body responds to the softening of judgment. When you release harshness toward yourself, your cells register the change. Biology follows the mind's direction. Gently, slowly, the chemistry shifts. Beyond the emotional processing of REM sleep that we explored earlier, researchers have also documented a related phenomenon: simply sleeping on difficult emotions. Without any deliberate processing, is associated with improved emotional tone toward those memories by morning. This overnight regulation effect has been observed across multiple studies and appears to reflect the cumulative action of sleep stages working together, not just REM alone. You do not have to resolve anything before you sleep. The night will do some of the work. By morning, something may feel different, not because you solved it, because your brain worked quietly while your conscious mind rested. Gratitude is one of the most studied positive emotions in psychology, and its neural correlates involve activation of the medial prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate, and limbic regions associated with reward. Research shows that gratitude practices, even brief ones, reduce the relative neural dominance of threat-related processing. This does not mean that regret is cancelled by gratitude. It means that gratitude expands the context in which regret sits. The loss becomes one element in a larger picture. The picture includes what was given, what was learned, what remains. The posterior cingulate cortex, a key node in the default mode network, is associated with self-referential thinking and mind-wandering. Research on mindfulness practice shows that experienced practitioners display reduced posterior cingulate cortex activity during resting states, suggesting less habitual self-referential looping. This is one of the neural signatures of a mind that has learned to rest more completely. You do not have to meditate for years to begin experiencing this shift. The practice begins the moment you decide to notice, without judgment, what is happening in your mind. The experience of being truly present, here, in this moment, in this body, is incompatible with regret. Regret lives in the past. Presence lives now. Research on mindfulness consistently shows that present moment awareness reduces the effective impact of difficult thoughts and memories. Not by eliminating them, but by placing them in a wider field of awareness. The thought arises. The awareness is larger than the thought. There is you, and then there is the thought you are having. And they are not the same thing. That gap is where freedom begins. Older adults, across many cultures, report lower levels of regret than younger adults, despite having objectively fewer years ahead to course correct. This paradox is explained in part by what Laura Carstenson's socio-emotional selectivity theory describes as a shift in motivational priority as people age. When the future feels shorter, emotional satisfaction and meaning become more important than exploration and information gathering. Older adults become more expert at letting go, at finding peace, at holding complexity with equanimity. The capacity is there, time and attention cultivated. Research on well-being across the lifespan consistently identifies a U-shaped curve. Life satisfaction tends to be relatively high in youth, dips in midlife, and rises again in later life. The midlife dip is associated with peak levels of regret, responsibility, and comparison. The rise in later life is associated with increased acceptance, gratitude, and the selective focusing of attention on what matters most. This arc suggests that what you may be experiencing tonight, the weight, the looping, has a shape. It is not permanent. The curve bends upward, And the turning begins, not in the distant future, but in small moments of release like this one. The vagus nerve is increasingly understood as a pathway not just for calming signals, but for social safety cues. Stephen Porges' polyvagal framework, which remains an area of ongoing research and debate, proposes that social engagement activates a ventral vagal circuit that promotes calmness, openness, and receptivity. Whether or not every detail of this model is confirmed, the underlying observation is consistent, feeling connected to others, even in imagination. Even through the warm voice of a story, shifts the nervous system toward safety. You are not alone in this. Many people have carried exactly what you are carrying tonight. The neural signature of self-criticism and the neural signature of self-compassion are measurably different. As confirmed by multiple neuroimaging studies, self-criticism activates the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex and regions associated with social comparison and threat. Self-compassion activates the insular and regions associated with warmth, care, and interoceptive awareness. This means that being kind to yourself is not a rhetorical act. It is a neurological choice. It routes processing through different circuits. Different circuits produce different chemistry. Different chemistry produces different experience. Kindness toward yourself is not weakness. It is intelligence. The glymphatic system, the brain's waste clearance network, which operates primarily during sleep, removes metabolic byproducts that accumulate during waking hours, including proteins associated with neurodegeneration. Research is ongoing, and some findings are based on animal models, but evidence suggests that the glymphatic system is most active during deep, slow-wave sleep. This system works in parallel with emotional processing. While REM sleep processes the emotional charge of the day, deep sleep clears the cellular residue. Sleep is maintenance at every level. Your brain tonight is both cleaning and healing. Research on meaning-making following adversity suggests that the key question is not what happened to me, but what am I going to do with what happened to me? Psychologists Crystal Park and Susan Folkman have studied the process of finding meaning in difficult experiences and found that successful meaning-making involves two components: making sense of what happened and finding benefit or purpose in it. These are not forced positivity exercises. They are the brain's natural drive toward coherence. Your mind is always looking for the story that makes the experience integrate. Give it a story with a direction. The speed of emotional recovery, what psychologists call emotional resilience, is not fixed from birth. Research by Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, has shown that the time it takes for the prefrontal cortex to regulate the amygdala after an emotional disturbance is a learnable skill. People with greater resilience show faster prefrontal cortex recovery after emotional arousal, and this capacity can be trained through meditation, through therapy, through consistent rest, through any practice that builds the muscle of returning to calm. You are building it tonight. In the slow rhythm of your breath, your immune system communicates bidirectionally with your brain through a network of signaling molecules, including cytokines and interleukins. Chronic psychological stress, including prolonged regret and rumination, is associated with elevated inflammatory markers in the bloodstream. Conversely, positive emotional states, effective coping, and adequate sleep are associated with reduced inflammation. The body keeps the score of the mind's state, and the mind can offer the body relief through the practices of release. Tonight, resting, breathing slowly, softening, you are not just calming your mind, you are quieting your immune system's alert status. Research on the relationship between language and emotion suggests that naming an emotion, what psychologists call affect labeling, reduces its neural intensity. A classic study by Matthew Lieberman and colleagues showed that attaching words to emotional experiences reduced amygdala activity and increased prefrontal engagement. The act of saying, even silently, "I feel regret, I feel grief, I feel longing," is not amplifying those feelings, it is the beginning of their regulation. Language transforms experience. The unnamed is the loudest. What is named can be held. You have now traveled through 75 facts about the neuroscience of letting go, and somewhere in the body listening to these words, something has shifted. The science has been doing its quiet work. The central question of tonight: what does the brain need to finally let go of regret? Is answering itself in the space between your thoughts. What it needs is exactly this: to be understood rather than judged, to be given time rather than urgency, to be offered the biology of rest rather than the tension of effort. Your brain can let go. It has been learning how. All night. Think of something in nature that completes a cycle, a tide that goes out, then returns, carrying nothing from the shore but clean water, a season that turns without being asked, a breath that releases completely before the next one arrives. Your story is not finished. It is moving. The chapter you have been holding so tightly is not the last one. Something is still being written. Even now, even as you rest, like water finding its level, like breath returning without effort, you are part of a rhythm far older than your regrets. Feel it. Let it hold you. You are already inside it. Research shows that writing in the third person about past regrets, as if telling someone else's story, reduces emotional reactivity and increases access to constructive coping strategies. The slight distance provided by shifting from I to she, to he, to they, allows the prefrontal cortex to engage more fully. It is easier to see the whole person, not just the wound. Try it. Someday, she was doing her best. He didn't know. They were afraid. Compassion follows understanding, not the other way around. The brain's default toward negativity, what psychologists call the negativity bias, evolved for survival. Threats required immediate attention. Opportunities could wait. This bias means that regretful memories are stored with greater salience, retrieved more easily, and processed more deeply than neutral or positive ones. Knowing this does not make the bias disappear, but it changes your relationship to it. The loop is not a character flaw. It is an ancient survival feature. Still running on old software, you can acknowledge it gently, and then, gently, choose to rest. The science of sleep stages reveals that the ratio of REM to deep sleep shifts across the night. Early sleep cycles contain more deep, slow-wave sleep, the restorative, physically reparative stage. Later cycles, in the second half of the night, are dominated by REM sleep, the dreaming stage associated with emotional processing and memory integration. This means that the longer you sleep, the more emotional processing occurs. Every hour of sleep you allow yourself. Tonight is an hour of quiet healing. The night does its work in layers. Compassion, when directed inward, activates regions of the brain associated with warmth and approach, motivation rather than avoidance and threat. Neuroscientist Tanya Singer has shown that compassion training increases pro-social motivation and reduces personal distress responses. When you approach your own regrets with curiosity rather than condemnation, the brain routes the experience through a different system entirely. The loop slows, the grip loosens, something breathes that had been held tight. Every night you sleep, your brain engages in a process called synaptic homeostasis, a resetting of neural connections to baseline levels after the strengthening of synapses that occurred during waking learning. This process prevents the brain from becoming saturated with the day's experiences and prepares it to learn again tomorrow. It is a nightly clearing, a literal reset. The brain that wakes tomorrow will have been reorganized by sleep, will be lighter in specific, measurable ways. You are already moving toward that reset. The concept of radical acceptance, drawn from dialectical behavior therapy, holds that acceptance of painful reality, not approval, not giving up, but acknowledgement, is the necessary precondition for change. When the mind stops fighting against the existence of what happened, it frees resources that were consumed by the resistance. Something releases, not because the past changed, but because the struggle against it eased. Acceptance is not the end of the story. It is often where the story truly begins. Research suggests that how people talk to themselves in the wake of regret matters enormously. Self-compassionate self-talk. I'm struggling, and that's okay. This was hard, and I'm doing my best, is associated with faster emotional recovery, less avoidant behavior, and greater motivation to repair and grow than self-critical self-talk. The inner voice that has sometimes been unkind to you was not trying to destroy you. It was trying to help, in the only way it knew. You can thank it for its effort, and then offer something softer. There is evidence that even small positive experiences, what Barbara Fredrickson calls micro-moments of positivity, have cumulative effects on neural architecture over time. These moments do not need to be dramatic. A warm thought, a moment of tenderness toward the self, a breath taken with intention over days and weeks. These micro-moments gradually shift the ratio of positive to negative activation in the brain. You are planting something tonight. You may not see it bloom immediately, but the planting is real. The experience of feeling understood by another person, by a community, or even by the quiet acknowledgement of your own mind, has measurable neurological effect. Studies on social support and emotional regulation show that the experience of being resonated with of having one's inner state met with attunement rather than indifference, promotes regulation and reduces the physiological burden of distress. You are not alone in what you carry. Many people, listening to science in the dark, have felt exactly what you feel tonight. That shared weight is itself a form of connection. Research on emotional granularity, the precision with which people can identify and label their emotional states, shows that people with greater emotional granularity recover more quickly from difficult experiences. Being able to distinguish between regret, geschrief, longing, embarrassment, and shame, rather than experiencing them all as an undifferentiated cloud of bad, allows for more targeted coping. Each emotion has a different function and a different resolution pathway. The more precisely you can see what you are feeling, the more clearly you can find your way through it. The prefrontal cortex is especially sensitive to the quality of sleep in the previous night. Just one night of insufficient sleep measurably reduces prefrontal cortex functioning, including the capacity for emotional regulation, impulse control, and reappraisal. This means that sleeping well tonight is not a passive indulgence. It is preparation. It is the most direct investment you can make in the quality of your thinking, feeling, and choosing tomorrow. The best version of your future self begins with tonight's rest. Research on death awareness. What psychologists call mortality salience sometimes has a surprising effect on how people process regret. When people are reminded of their mortality in a gentle, contemplative way, they often report increased appreciation for the present moment and reduced preoccupation with past regrets. The awareness of finitude focuses attention on what matters, not in a frightening way, but in a clarifying one. This moment is real. The breath you are taking right now is real. The regret is a thought about a moment that is gone. This, here, is what remains. The brain's capacity for hope, for imagining a future that is meaningfully better than the present, is deeply connected to its memory systems. Research shows that people with amnesia, who cannot form new memories, also show impaired ability to imagine the future. Memory and hope use the same constructive machinery. This means that the same brain that replays regret is also the brain that generates hope. The machinery can be redirected. The same neural architecture that stores what was lost can construct what might yet be found. Neuroplasticity research consistently shows that repeated patterns of thought and attention shape the brain's functional organization over time. This principle, sometimes summarized as neurons that fire together, wire together, means that habitual rumination deepens rumination pathways, and habitual compassion deepens compassion pathways. The direction you turn your attention consistently and gently over time is the direction your brain grows. Tonight, you are choosing a direction toward rest, toward release, toward something softer than the loop. Studies on wisdom, the psychological construct of deep understanding combined with emotional balance, suggest that wisdom is associated with the integration of both positive and negative life experiences into a coherent worldview. Wise individuals do not avoid difficulty, They hold it with perspective. They feel sorrow without being consumed. They understand without needing to judge. Wisdom arrives in small increments. Through the slow work of integrating what life has given, you are doing that work. You have been doing it for years. Every difficult emotion you have moved through in your life has left neural traces, not just of the pain, but of the survival. Your nervous system carries the knowledge that you made it through, that things that felt insurmountable were, in time, surmountable, that the weight that seemed permanent eventually shifted. This knowledge lives in you, not as a memory you consciously access, but as a residual confidence that the body carries. You have survived everything that has happened to you so far. That is an extraordinary thing. Research on interpersonal neurobiology, developed by Daniel Siegel, emphasizes the concept of integration, the linking of differentiated parts of a system into a coherent whole. Psychological health, in this framework, is characterized by neural integration, the ability to hold different thoughts, emotions, and experiences without them compartmentalizing or colliding chaotically. Regret that has been processed becomes integrated, part of the story, not the whole of it, a thread in the tapestry rather than the unraveling of it. Tonight is a moment of integration, the practice of loving-kindness meditation, in which practitioners silently extend wishes of well-being to themselves and others, has been shown to increase positive effect, reduce self-criticism, and activate neural circuits associated with empathy and positive social emotion. You do not need to be a meditator to access this, even briefly, silently, offering yourself a thought of warmth. May I rest tonight. May I release what I no longer need to carry. Activate something. Small kindnesses toward the self are never wasted. Research on the narrative arc of regret across a lifetime suggests that the most profound healing tends to occur not when people stop thinking about their regrets, but when the story of the regret changes, when the interpretation shifts. From "this ruined everything" to "this changed my direction." From "I should have known better" to "I was doing what I could with what I had." The facts do not change. The meaning of the facts does. And meaning is made by you, in the quiet moments of reflection, in the drowsy space between waking and sleep. Sleep researchers have documented that the transition from wakefulness to sleep involves a gradual dissolution of self-referential thought, the endless I and my and me, as consciousness becomes less structured and more diffuse. This dissolution is not loss. It is a kind of relief. The self that carries the regrets rests, and what remains is something quieter, something without edges. This happens every night. You have already experienced it thousands of times. Tonight, it is waiting for you again, just beyond the last of these words. In the soft dark, on the other side of wakefulness, the most current understanding of the neuroscience of emotional healing suggests that healing is not a destination, but a direction, a gentle, persistent orientation toward understanding rather than judgment, toward compassion rather than criticism, toward the present moment rather than the unchangeable past. This orientation does not require perfection. It does not require breakthrough. It requires only the willingness to return, again and again, to a little more softness, to a little more grace. You have that willingness. You are showing it right now. Emotion regulation strategies are most effective when they are applied before emotional intensity reaches its peak. What researchers call proactive regulation. This is one of the reasons why winding down before sleep, rather than engaging with distressing content, produces such reliably better outcomes. You chose tonight to come here, to listen, to let science hold the space of the difficult question. That choice was proactive regulation. That choice was wisdom. Your nervous system noticed. Research from the field of positive neuroplasticity suggests that consciously resting the mind in positive experiences, allowing them to register fully rather than passing over them quickly, may help encode those experiences more durably into long-term neural patterns. This idea, explored by researchers including Rick Hansen, proposes that the brain's negativity bias can be gently counterbalanced by deliberately savoring positive states when they arise. The precise timing and mechanisms are still being studied, but the underlying principle is consistent with what we know about memory consolidation. Attention and emotional engagement matter. You can let this quiet in. You can let it stay. The science of change, across psychology, neuroscience, and clinical research, converges on a single insight. Lasting change happens in small steps, consistently practiced. Over time, there is no switch that flips. There is no single moment when the weight disappears. But there are moments, like this one, when the weight becomes slightly lighter, when the loop slows by a breath, when the story opens just a little more space. Those moments accumulate. They compound. They become, over time, the difference between a mind that carries its past heavily and a mind that carries it gently. Tonight, 100 facts later, you arrive at the last thing the science has to offer. Your brain was never broken. The regrets you carry are evidence that you cared, that you were paying attention, that you wanted things to be different because you understood that different was possible. The loop that runs is not a malfunction. It is the sound of a mind that cares deeply, still searching for peace. And peace, tonight, is here, in the slow breath, in the quieting body, in the willingness to let the science say, you have done enough, you have learned enough, it is safe. Now, to let go. 100 facts, tonight, and beneath every single one, the same patient message. Your brain knows how to heal. You heard about the orbitofrontal cortex, running its ancient comparison loop, not to punish you, but to teach. You heard about memory reconsolidation, the biochemical truth that every time you remember, the story is being quietly rewritten. You heard about REM sleep, working tonight as you drift, gently separating the sting from the memory while preserving the lesson. You traveled through the science of self-compassion, of narrative identity, of the body that softens when it finally feels safe. You did not just listen to facts tonight. You gave your nervous system 100 quiet reasons to believe that what it carries can, in time, be set down. Regret is a loop that runs on love. You would not regret what did not matter. And what mattered to you, even the things that broke you a little, is evidence of your depth. Tonight, the depth rests. That caring heart rests. Let your breath slow until it moves almost on its own. Let the boundary between you and the room become soft. Let the edges of your body ease into the surface beneath you. You are not a collection of mistakes. You are not the sum of what you wish you had done differently. You are this breath, arriving and departing without effort. You are this quiet, spreading outward. You are this moment, already releasing into the next. Whatever you have been carrying tonight, you do not have to carry it into sleep. You can place it here, at the edge of wakefulness, and let the night receive it. You are already letting go. You already are. Tonight's science was made for the people who needed it most. Share it with someone who is still carrying something heavy. Subscribe to return here whenever rest feels far away. We will keep going, slowly, one sleepy soul at a time. You are allowed to stop thinking now. You are allowed to leave the questions unanswered. You are allowed to let this day be complete, exactly as it was. You are allowed to forgive yourself for anything that remains unfinished. You are allowed to trust that tomorrow will bring what tonight cannot. You are allowed to release your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. You are allowed to drift. You have done enough. You are enough. Good night.